Welcome to SkyboundOps.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of SkyboundOps, where I think here we sit down with the people that are reshaping aviation, the systems, the structures, everything about it. Today, I have a guest who's somebody I believe is very special. A little bit about her, and you'll find out in a minute. Her career didn't follow your typical path. She didn't enter aviation through the cockpit or the hangar, but she did build her foundation in accounting, in operations, process discipline, and more. Kelly Carlson is the president and founder of Extrinsic Aviation. She spent years in roles where precision and stewardship were all the way up there, as they very well should be. And from managing multi-million part import program in Malaysia to leading departments across repairs, supply chain, ERP implementation, she's done it all. And without any further ado, I'm going to say welcome to the show, Kelly. Thank you very much. Take two, I think, is going to be awesome. How are you?
I think I'm doing really good today. Thank you so much. Been a little under the weather, so outside of that, things are going really good. Been a great day.
So I'm very, very glad you're here. I mean, obviously, people don't know how we met, but you and I met about a year and a half ago. I've told you a million times. I wish it was longer, but it was started with a LinkedIn conversation, and it grew, I think, into a good friendship. And I can't wait to really build on that. But before we get into the deep aviation world, how are things in Kansas City these days?
I'm going to tell you that they're cold. Um, I think I texted you yesterday. It was like -5 wind chill, and we joke since you're in Florida, and I'm
Mhm.
jealous. So, it's been a little bit chilly, and outside of being under the weather a little bit, it was nice to hang out over the weekend with my family. And outside of that, things are moving forward really quickly and going really well. How about for you?
Good. Well, I think I may have lied to you. I will complain about the weather as many chances as I get moving forward. But I happen to love the cold weather, but everybody always tells me it's because I'm leaving and I might feel a little bit differently. But you're right. If I woke up to -5 degree, even a wind chill, I might have just wanted to curl back inside. So yeah, I'm going to play it both ways, whichever works. So as we dive in, tell me, what's something that's good that's happened this week?
Well, let's see. So I'm currently in the midst of a NDA with another company regarding a project that has been in the works for 4 or 5 years in my head, and I've been working really hard to take that leap and the risk and be an original with kind of the thoughts behind what I hope to bring to aviation going forward. So getting close on that has been really exciting. When you're able to like respark something that has been kind of in the sidelines to what I'm currently doing, it's just been exciting to kind of see that get some traction and know that not too far from now, will have made leaps and bounds of progress to do what I call my passion project. And so I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome. We're going to get into that in just a minute, but let's learn a little bit more about all of the stuff that I guess got you here.
Sure.
Uh, Before Extrinsic, take us back. Before Extrinsic Aviation, before managing the spare parts business, whether it was in Malaysia or anywhere else with the Malaysia Airlines, uh, when did you sort of realize that this is for you?
Gracious. So I really have always been kind of I was thinking about it after our first take, comically, after having seen kind of how it went and the things that I said, it made me realize that I feel like it's important to say I remember vividly being 6 or 7, 8 downstairs where my mom, she was a professional seamstress. And so she sewed down there and I had this little desk. And I just remember like having stacks of paper and I would be like, getting them all exactly right in order and stapling them. And they all meant something at the time to me, but it was all very much about how I was going to file things and that all of the papers were exactly straight and stapled just right. And so I kind of recall back to them like how important the whole I don't want to call it perfectionism, but it kind of is, like just kind of knowing like where everything was perfectly. And obviously that has definitely changed quite a bit with experience and age and all the things. And now I call myself a messy perfectionist. So no one could figure out where I have stuff stacked. But if I know where I put it, I know how to find it. It kind
Right.
of amazes people. I'm like, oh yeah, that's over there, 4 papers down to the, So, anyways, my dad was an entrepreneur, and so I didn't realize until I got a little bit older that I've really tracked in his footsteps. Went to school for a bit, really wasn't for me, and so I started my first job in a marble and granite company as a receptionist at 19. And I worked through that with the processes and procedures there, kind of just organically seeing things that I felt like we could do better and differently from an administrative side. That kind of carried over. After I left there, I went worked for my dad's company. Back in the day when everything was on paper, they had an archaic system that wouldn't track the trucks. And we had like 30 trucks and it didn't track the paperwork and the customers. And so I did a bunch of research and found an ERP for his company and implemented it. When I was getting ready to have my son, he was now 21, aged nonetheless.
Wow.
That was a shocker looking up in the liquor store and seeing that no alcohol before this date and then his birth year. I was like, oh,
Whoa.
gracious. Um, but anyways, my dad taught me a really hard lesson when I decided to take some time off to be with Brody as a baby. He basically said, if you leave, I can't bring you back. And if I do, it wouldn't be in a position that you weren't overqualified for. And I was so offended. Like, I was so offended. Like, how could you even say that? And he's like, Kel, if I give someone else this job, I have to have someone in this position. And if I spend the time and money to train someone, I'm not going to demote them. And it was a small company. So there wasn't room for two of us to do that
Hmm.
job. And so I left. Shortly after Brody was born, I realized that working is kind of a very core part of who I am. So I started my own company and I did disaster recovery for a company that went after the hurricanes and cleaned up all the trees and bushes. And back in the day, whenever I started with them, we worked for government contracts for each of the cities, like in all of the Florida hurricanes, Katrina, right around that time. And everything was on paper. So you literally had to fill out all of these tickets and then you would put them in a FedEx envelope and you would overnight them to the companies. Well, you had to actually write the tickets. The guys would give them to me, and then I had to type that information into a
I
document.
remember.
And way back then, I was like, there has to be an easier way. So I dug in and figured out how to get a PDF program to read said scanned tickets. Not near as easy as it is today, obviously, but it's just kind of been a sequence of events that have brought me to realizing that there's a different way to do everything if you just like step outside the box for a minute and decide there has to be an easier way. So after that, after Katrina, it was very stressful and I quit working for that company and decided to just go get a quote unquote real job, I suppose. And I was laying in bed and the news came on and there was a job of the day. So back then when you were looking for a job, you didn't get to go to Indeed or wherever. You looked in the newspaper and or you saw job of the day on an ad on KCTV5. So I applied. I faxed my resume and applied and I got a job in aviation. And what landed me here today is all of the very valuable experiences that I have got to be a part of. So operations has always kind of just been where I thrive. And in looking at software and understanding not only how it's intended to be used, but also how you can use how it's intended to better the internal processes of a company.
You know what? You just covered like a lot of information. On some of it, I was thinking back. On other things, I remember 2005. I remember my FedEx account. I remember filling out everything. I remember the guy coming every single day at 5 o'clock, I think, to pick up all the packages for the day. And now it's done without even lifting a finger. But that's how really times changed. But I've heard you talk a little bit about, I mean, I know you didn't say the words, but I heard you talk a little bit about your superpowers. So I know from knowing you that you've led massive logistics operations, right? You've done multi-million dollar imports of parts from Malaysia. What stands out to you in that experience that is thoroughly contributing to who you are right now?
So I think that it has to do with all of the different experiences that I've had within my aviation career specifically. And the reason that I say that is I just have always seen the biggest picture, regardless of what department I was in. So I've worked in every single department except for sales prior to what I'm doing now. And for a specific reason, because I really am not, I don't love selling parts. So having been in the aftermarket before, I just kind of gained experience looking at ways to solve issues that we deal with in aviation that I think go unnoticed. Um, just knowing that a salesperson at the quoting process clicking one key that's inaccurate can cause an accounting team hours and hours and hours to track back and understand where the error occurred and then get it reversed so that they could post the books at the end of the month, all the sales and accurate information. So, having had those experiences, I just feel like has made me realize over time my superpower is to not accept the status quo. There always is a way to look at data differently in a different light, identify how the pieces connect at the biggest picture instead of just dealing with what's AOG today.
Right.
And I love it. It's just I
It
love
shows.
say again.
I said it shows. It shows just about every time I talk to you. So, how did you've built teams, right? You've built a lot of teams. You've rebuilt broken processes, probably saved an obscene amount of money and costs everywhere that you've been. I mean, I know it was over time, but what were the moments when you realized to yourself, you had that moment where you said, I can do all of this, or I can build something on my own? How did that sort of present itself?
So I would say very specifically the one project that I was involved in is that we had a lot of sales that were backed up or held because stuff was stuck out at a repair station. And as we all know, urgency in getting parts to customers generally, if they're asking for it, it's because they need it, not because they're planning forward, especially when you're talking about rotables for instance, and with a distributor, sometimes people are stocking for 6, 8, 10, 12 months out, but not everybody always has that
Right.
ability. So if someone, a big customer, FedEx, let's say, since you mentioned them, came in for a part because they required it, they ended up requiring it sooner than we could get it repaired because of whatever stopgap there was.
Hmm.
Let's say the expendables weren't available or there it needed a filter or one of them was a seal that we couldn't find anywhere, and so they just got lost in the system. So having pulled a open quote report or an open sales order report and the repairs associated, we realized that there was a big gap, and so they created what turned into being an order fulfillment department. And our job, that there was three of us, was entirely to figure out, does the customer still need it? If they do, where's it at and how can we fix the problem? And digging into those, they were sitting there because it was hard. Like there wasn't a solution like, oh, we just need an expendable. Most
Hmm.
of them were because we literally couldn't find it. The shop couldn't find it. It wasn't because of anything but lead time or the inability to find what we needed. So I got to learn a lot about the IPC. I worked with some really bright guys that were familiar and they taught me like, okay, they're saying they need a dash 7, but if we go to a dash -6 for the subcomponent and get it modded up to a -7 that saves the part, it might be a $600,000 sale with a $60,000 solution. So that was the defining moment that I said, all of this stuff is out there and available. How could we map it all together and identify the problems? And we did. And I think I ended up salvaging like $1.3 million worth of sales just by digging into the repairs and identifying what the problem was and how to solve it, more importantly. So I loved doing it, and it's really been my passion, like I said, ever since. My mind is constant, like, ooh, can I connect that and this?
So let's talk a little bit about the founding of Extrinsic Aviation, right? I think you just outlined a lot of things that I think were drivers, at least the way that I'm looking into you deciding to come do this. Were these the problems in the aviation aftermarket that they basically became too big to ignore, or are they part of the problem that became too big to ignore?
I think that it is part of a problem that's become too
Right.
big to ignore. I feel like I don't know, someone had read, I don't even know, was it you or someone had sent me an article that said that a lot of people were tearing down, I want to say it was 737s that were only 5 years old, because of the strain of the aftermarket and finding rotables and rotables that would support those aircraft. So the leasing companies were finding that it was more economical to tear down the aircraft and try to support it with the rotables. So it's just been a series of things that have come to light over the last 10 years for me that have said, if we could salvage one part that makes a plane no longer economically viable to run, then it's likely sitting somewhere in someone's warehouse, whether it just be unknown to them that it's there because they don't fly that fleet anymore,
Right.
or them finding out that it's sitting 50 BER units are sitting in someone's warehouse, but when you contacted them, they're looking to sell the one that they have on the shelf, not realizing the gold mine that they have sitting just because it isn't the priority. And so I think that just the fractionability and the time it takes to put all those pieces together and the backside would make a big impact. And that is why Extrinsic came about, kind of.
I mean, that's a really, really good reason. And I think, I don't know if you use these words, but I think you've emphasized sustainability. That's what I heard you talk about. You've talked about optimizing how you reclaim certain things instead of just go to A and walk away. And I think from your past, you did a lot of bankruptcy stewardship, which I think leads to some of the same thing, because you're kind of sort of telling everybody about something that they didn't already know, or weren't looking at, or ignored, or any of the above. Are those the main three, or are there other things that are helping you drive? Basically, I guess if I'm sorry, let me say that backwards. What is I know. So I start thinking, and then all of a sudden I start thinking of other things and I can't bring it back together. But what is the specific gap that you're seeing, especially now that you're, I don't know, what, 18 months, 19 months into this?
So, kind of the story about Extrinsic and how it came about is I had done the bankruptcy project management for Malaysia Airlines with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 been presented the opportunity to talk to a representative in Jamaica with 𝗲𝗯ance_COOPER, and they were doing the liquidation for Fly Jamaica Airways. It was a small airline and it was a small package. So being that it was only, I think that there was like 1,300 part numbers, maybe around 2,000 parts, they were having a very difficult time finding one of the big guys that wanted to take on the project just because of the amount of time, energy, work, travel, all of the things, not a big project for a big company, as well as its older material 7.5 and 7.6. So, me being who I am, I discussed it with them and said, heck, I can do this. And they said, we're going to give you a shot. They knew I was a startup. They knew that there were going to be challenges on both sides. Because I'm a startup, and being a startup is harder than one realizes, I think.
It
And so
absolutely is.
it's been a long process, about 18 months. I am to the point actually now that I'm ready to start really pushing the material into the market. And I think that one of the hardest things for me with the Fly Jamaica Airways material hasn't been the auditability side, because I already knew how to do that side. Honestly, for me, it's been the pricing and the sales side. I came from an organization that had centuries of data and pricing and market, and walking into this without all of that became a bigger challenge. I realized it would be, but that's where it started. And I took the project on, telling my husband it was all going to be fine. I took the project on knowing that I wanted to have those funds available to start this next thing, which is trying to resolve the lack of time that is taken and or available, the lack of experience that we have in the industry for people that have time, right? So it's all related. You have
It is.
people that do or don't have time, or do or don't have the knowledge, and the people with the knowledge don't have the time to teach the people with the time the knowledge, because it can be very complex to
It is. It
understand
is.
and
And
figure
it's
out
hard
why
to give
stuff
away
is
all of that
sitting around.
experience too. Right. Sorry,
Right.
I spoke over you, but it's hard to give away all of that experience too.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. So I just have found that if we can solve the issue of time and fractionability internally, that we can solve a huge sustainability issue that supports our industry, not only just to free up space in warehouses, to give companies a little bit of reverse, or a lot, let's say, of reverse revenue, meaning instead of writing parts off, let's have a solution to not having to take those steps, whereby pushing material back into the supply chain where it's
Right.
needed, and also being able to support the 2050 sustainability goals that all the airlines are trying to
Right.
reach. So it's a multifaceted way to look at things, that looks kind of, I like to say, reverse. Instead of dealing with what's on fire today, we're going to deal with the things that those lacking time, knowledge, and
Right.
able to put all the fractionability of those problems together in one solution.
So is it, yeah, I mean, I think that's, first of all, I think that's amazing. And I think if you can successfully make that shift, I think the outcome is unfathomable or unimaginable in a really, really good way. I don't know how much you want to get into this, but I wanted to ask you nonetheless. I know that you're now, you talked about it a little bit, but now you're also piloting your second division. Are those the things that sort of sparked that expansion, or were there other things that sort of went into the pot at the same time as it started to cook?
So the pot has been cooking for like 5 years.
Okay.
Extrinsic has been around for about 18 months. And like I
Right.
said, I was awarded the contract with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to do the Fly Jamaica Airways bankruptcy, which has really been my full-time everything that I've been putting everything into for the last 18 months.
Right.
Like I said, I have about 15 to 1800 parts, a lot of expendables, tooling, hydraulic jacks, tripod jacks, dolly stands. I could go on about the material that I have here in stock that I'm ready to liquidate. Once that liquidation is well on its way, I'm in the process of taking the next step
Okay.
toward kind of what I was just explaining.
Right. Right. Right.
So that's kind of, I don't know if I've made that really confusing, but it's,
No, not at all. Not at all. I just kind of wanted to touch on it because I know they're related, but one of the things I'm going to walk away with, and I'm looking down because I actually wrote it down. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that and make it my own. The pot's been cooking for 5 years. I think that's absolutely amazing, and I think only somebody who's walked the walk can or should be able to say something like that. And I'm gonna remember this for a very, very long time. So thank you very much, and I'll try to give you as much credit as possible. But once in a while, I'm gonna pretend that it's my own.
hey, I don't
So
blame you. It's a good one.
It is. It really is. You know, once in a while you hear something like, "Holy crap! that's amazing. That's spot on," and it makes a lot of sense. And I think it goes a long way. So your work, I think, is very, very, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's deeply data driven, and it would have to be process heavy at the same time. So when you first go into something and you're trying to either look at it for the first time or trying to evaluate something else, what's the first thing that you typically look at? Because it has to go that way, otherwise it's a no.
So I think that the first thing that I have to identify is what inventory exists, right? What inventory exists for a reason? What inventory exists and it never had a purpose in the first place? And an example of that would be everybody buys packages, right? So I've seen it done 1,000 times. I've done it myself, where someone is sent a list and they go through that list and they recognize the top 50 parts and highlight them yellow.
Yep.
These are going to sell out of the gate. And then they base what they're purchasing the package for on the revenue from, let's say, those top 30, 50 parts, right? So the rest of the parts, you're going to have, we'll just call it the green, yellow, reds. The reds should never transfer from this warehouse to that warehouse because it's just going to serve the same purpose at both companies.
Right.
One, a hope and a dream, right? Two, it's
Absolutely.
collecting dust, taking up space, getting moved 1,000 times. So without having that information out of the gate, nothing that I do is worthy, right? So it's really identifying how do we take that inventory that's collecting dust, is what I like to call it, and turn it into revenue. And that can be
Right.
done in so many different ways. Everybody knows 1 or 10 or 12 of the 100 ways. I feel like the piece that's missing is it's so fractional. Time, knowledge.
Right.
So you have to be able to identify, okay, this report says we have all this in our warehouse, but do we?
Correct.
Do we? Okay, now we have 15 employees that are shipping ROs and sales orders and wanting to get parts out the door. But do those 15 people really have the time to go double check all of that inventory? Maybe, maybe not. So you have to identify how much of the inventory is actually going to ever be used, right? Once you've identified that, then you can go through a list of those 100 things where pieces of all of those things somebody knows, but if you can't put them all together and take out that fractionability, the skill, the management, the time, the energy, the human people it's going to take to actually make the revenue come into your company, you have to be able to put all of that together. And that is what I find I'm really good at, is just looking at all of the different pieces. But the very first thing you have to look at is the data, the parts list,
Right.
what conditions they're in, the trace documentation. Then you can take those next steps and say, okay, I know that you have all of this. You actually, sir, ma'am, get a report once a week. I need to know if you even look at it. Because I can tell you in operations, I've designed 9,000 reports, and that's an exaggeration, but not far off. That I know that once it was designed and approved, it was probably looked at once after it was sent every day or weekly because of time not being the priority.
Right. Yeah, you see that a lot. I mean, even in different ways, I see that a lot in a lot of other things, whether it's my life now, my life 10 years ago, my life somewhere in between. Everybody wants to be informed, but not everybody takes the time to find out what being informed really is. So when you call them, I'm speaking a little bit more from my experience, but when you call them to the carpet, they really don't have an answer, and it doesn't really matter. So you have to know these things. You have to go in ready to know these things and also talk about the solution. At least that's how I see it. And I think that's what moves the needle.
And you literally just hit it. Like, you have to go in with the solution. So you can't walk in to a company and say, I can take care of all of your dusty inventory, unless there is a very specific plan that you can lay out and how it's going to work and where the money is going to come back. Because until there's revenue involved, you're still taking up people's time.
Correct.
But I would like to walk into someone's organization and say, yes, this is all going to take time, but you're going to have to touch it twice, and I need 3 hours.
Correct.
Once that 3 hours is up, I'm going to present you with revenue producing information that I can take action on, should we work the deal that way, immediately. Instead of saying, I'm going to need constant involvement by everyone in your staff.
And that's how you have to be. That's absolutely how you have to be. I think it's more than just having that core philosophy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about the ability to believe in it and preach it and expect action out of it, at least the way that I look at it. You know, you don't want to be one of those people that starts a conversation with an owner or a leader that says, we're in difficult times, and in difficult times you have to do A, B, and C. I've been on both ends of that conversation, and it goes nowhere. You have to go in, you say, here's the problem, here's the solution as I see it, here's what you have to do, and here's what to expect. And I think that's respectable. I think it takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage in order to be able to stand and say things like that. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that too, one of my core philosophies, kind of, I've learned the hard way, is instead of coming in and saying, this is what's going to fix it, come in and say, what is the problem? Help me understand, if we're talking about this particular subject, what would you say your core issues are? And if they don't have a core issue, then you can say, is it possibly? Have you thought of? Could this be a good idea? Because I don't have all the answers. I just know that I have seen enough to see and talk to enough people to say, I know that this problem runs rampant in the industry. And I also know how hard supply chain is today and what a push there is for sustainability. All of those things, in my opinion, mesh together to kind of be, if you can solve it for one company, you're making a big impact.
I think it's about being able to see it. I mean, I think you agree with me, but I think it's about being able to see it. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I've never walked into the room having dreamt of the solution the night before. But I've walked into a room having thought about the problem and sitting there, sleeves rolled up, waiting to sort of stack things up until the solution starts to present itself. And I think that's part of that philosophy that we talked about. I think it's part of your DNA. I think it's part of our DNA in general in order to be able to do that. So how do you not go nuts? I mean, everything that we just talked about, I think everything that we just talked about is super high pressure, the way that I look at it, right? How do you not go nuts and continue to build that culture for execution?
I don't know that I can say that I don't go nuts. I mean, that's really cute and all, Ralph. I appreciate that you believe that I'm not crazy, but it's really hard for me to explain, but I never stop thinking. Never. So I'm going to give you an example. It's kind of the silliest, maybe not so silly example, but today I opened my email. And it is about, I'm going to actually pull it up because this is so relevant to our conversation. I can't remember the company. Bear with me. I wish I would have thought of it before. Oh, it's okay. It's still up on my screen because it says sustainability in the air, right? And it says how bags of ethics and British Airways turned 16,000 airline uniforms into a blueprint for circularity. And I'm like, I read the first line. Airlines refresh uniforms every 10 to 20 years, creating textile waste that rarely gets attention. British Airways partners with Bags of Ethics, shows a different approach in its 2023 update. BA retired 16,000 uniforms and upcycled them into passport holders, luggage tags, and blankets instead of disposing of them. So I'm like, this is brilliant. But do you know the first thing that came to my mind? First, how many seats I have seen in so many warehouses that eventually are either going to land in the landfill, but if someone took the covers off of all of those seats and sent them to Bags of Ethics, that would be one more step towards helping sustainability, right? But it was instant. It didn't even take me a second to go from uniforms to seat covers. And so these are the things you had said don't go nuts. I go nuts because I can't get it all written down.
I don't call that nuts. I really, really don't. And I'm telling you that maybe because I relate to a lot of it. I'm going to tell you something personal about me. In my opinion, some people may agree or disagree. In my opinion, my brain shuts down in two situations. One, when I'm playing golf, and it's not always good. And then the second one is when I'm doing yard work. I promise you, I don't know, I don't want to swear to God, but I swear to God, my brain just stops during those activities. Every other time, it's always thinking, what if I struggle with what to write down, with what not to write down? So maybe you're not nuts because I'm nuts too, and we're both nuts together. But ultimately, I don't think that's nuts, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and
Uh,
so I think that it's the balance sometimes is really
it
hard,
is.
right?
It is.
So I've worked really hard with my family over the last I don't know, 7 or 8 years probably to find a balance. And you say that there's only a few times that your brain actually isn't TikToking about something else.
Correct.
Mine is watching my daughter play soccer and talking to my son on the phone who's in New York. Like those are the two times that I shut down entirely. And I can tell you after a soccer game or after having talked to Brody on the phone that I literally could not say, oh, I thought about work or I thought about what
Right.
next closet to organize in my house or that I literally, that's when it shuts off. And so if she played soccer more frequently than she already does, which is a lot, it would probably do a lot for my mental health if I were guessing.
I think that's absolutely amazing. A couple other things just to sort of get the uh, just relax a little bit before we leave. There's one thing that I wanted to ask you that might sound weird, but I'm interested because I have my weird quirks too. And the first one is, what is, it doesn't have to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is an aviation related task that you secretly find very satisfying?
uh Spreadsheets. I wish I
Uh,
could say different, but
it's okay.
like
It's okay. It's okay.
connecting the dots, it is
Very
probably
satisfying.
alarmingly soothing and shouldn't be,
It
but
is. It absolutely is. Well, again, it soothes the brain, I think, and it's
right,
that lot you can't argue sometimes with the real logic. So, the
right.
second part I wanted to ask you, I want to tell a short story first for everybody listening. So this, we talked about this earlier in this conversation. This is our take number two.
Yeah.
Kelly and I met last week and we did the episode, and she asked and I agreed that we do this again. There were some audio difficulties. Let's leave it there. But I'm going to ask her the same question. I asked it because I was taken away by the answer. And that question is what's your coffee order when you need to get through a long day of anything?
There's a coffee every day, first and
Right.
foremost. That not optional. I'm a Starbucks girl through and through. Um, have been for as I think as long as Starbucks has been around. I have probably invested a small fortune in $8 coffees. Used to be
Uh-huh.
5. So my go-to drink has always been a white mocha something.
Yep.
Iced, always venti, always extra shot, iced, hot, or a frappuccino. Hands down, my favorite. Lately, I have been liking the oat milk, brown sugar oat milk with a sprinkle of cinnamon. Only iced, preferably, but the last few, -5 degrees days, I have gone back to Old Faithful, which is venti white mocha hot with an extra shot.
I didn't want to have to put this in the comments once we push this episode out, but what I said to Kelly on the first time that we taped this is the exact same thing I'm going to say right now. My go-to drink is a quad venti white chocolate mocha, blonde and ristretto with mocha drizzle on top of the whip, and primarily hot, but sometimes I'll take it cold, and the frappuccino kills. And I don't know how that is such an almost identical anything that we can talk about. But I think that's a really good point to sort of say thank you and slow down from here. Before we go, I don't care what you have to do. If somebody wants to find out what you're doing, if somebody wants to find you for any reason, go ahead and tell them how to get in touch with you right now. I want to make sure that that's part of this recording too.
Well, thank you. But before I do that, I want to thank you, Ralph, for having me. We talked about this a little bit. Take one. This is my first podcast, and first of anything, right? You're putting yourself out there in a different way. So I appreciate take one more so than you know. Take two, I feel like we're gonna hit it out of the ballpark. So I'm good with that. But thank you sincerely. And I do consider you a friend. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in the end of April. So, but I just, like I said, I really appreciate your friendship. The collaboration that we've been able to hit back and forth has just been phenomenal. As a startup, you have to make decisions early in the game. I'm going to give you props. I think 𝗀𝗃.𝗀𝗚 is phenomenal. Sometimes you have a bit of investment with whatever it is that you chose at the time. Someday, I hope that we'll work together more than just from a friendship standpoint and collaboration, but also from a business standpoint. So I'm looking forward to that. What was I supposed to say? Oh, how can you reach me?
How can you reach you?
My email is kelly@extrinsicaviation.com. But I hate email, just to be fair. So WhatsApp or call me on my mobile are better. I really enjoy good conversation face to face or on the phone all day long. I would take that over responding back and forth 57 times on one email. So call me, my phone number 913-963-8403. And you can also go to my website, which is in the midst of giving an overhaul. So that's pretty exciting. And it's just extrinsicaviation.com. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this again. Thank you for your words. I believe them. I feel them every time that we talked. As I've said before, the only regret I have is not knowing you for 15 years, and it's only 15 months, but time only moves forward. So at some point I'll be able to say that. Thank you. A million thank yous, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Okay. Thank you, Ralph. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
Kelly. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.